So here we are in the fourth round of the summer of 1758 in Clash of Monarchs. We did the Austrian turn, and even if I can remember what they tried to do. Not much. Mainly they started moving some of their light troops out of the box here because there's nothing they can actually raid in the border area. They pillaged Silesia all the way down, and Saxony, actually they raided that and got some supplies, but that counts against them. So they really don't want to completely despoil Saxony. In fact, it's possible that the Prussians may do so to lower the national will. We'll see what happens there. But it was through an automatic Kleiner Krieg. The Prussians responded by moving into Olmütz. Basically, Friedrich went back to Glatz, gathered up his forces there, and swung down. And he actually has a dual supply route right now, which is going to make things harder on the Austrians to defend. He can supply through these hexes or up through these. And that means that there's no real single point that the Austrians can legitimately cut. They could cut this line, but then he's still safe. They'd have to cut this line and actually get right next to him. They may or may not want to do that. But the Austrians withdrew, and Friedrich laid siege to Olmütz. And on the Russian turn, we see why the Russians have been being ignored by the Prussians so successfully. They were holding the Is the Tsarina dead card, and they got a roll of 4 on that, which meant that the Russian army had to basically retreat all the way back to Vilna. And it's going to be a walk back. And it's unlikely they're going to be able to make it deep into Prussia. East Prussia, well, that's a shame that they took it, but I didn't think that was defendable. So here on the, we just finished up the 4th turn, we're going to the 5th turn of summer. The English played their fleet and moved it out into the North Sea. The French finally got their march off and attacked at Münster, and both sides were demoralized. 2 losses, actually 2d2 results. These are only a minor battle, or a non-intense battle, or whatever that is. And they both stay in the same space, which is kind of an interesting weirdness in this game, is that you can occupy the same space without a siege, without anything like that. So that's kind of cool. So it's the end of summer, beginning of fall. There'll be a new hands of cards going out, but not a lot happened. The Austrians continued moving those light troops here. They're out of supply, or on short supply now, but they can still make it into the German box. It may be hard for them to come out of the German box. I'm not sure if they can join Imperial troops if they want to. As of right now, it's not really an issue. By the way, this guy doesn't have any light troops with him. They were unable to rally Charles, even though they paid to try. Frederick was unable to siege Olmütz. I don't remember. Leipzig fell. I don't know if that was just now or earlier. The Russians were unable to move. France and England just recovered. They didn't actually fight. I don't know if they should fight. I don't know if they have an option to. I'll look that up. Maybe the French can fight if they want. The biggie, though, was the French played a card to bring the Swedes into the game, which I don't know how much good that's going to do, but it certainly opens up a new frontier against the Prussians. And the way Berlin is open is a really scary factor. It's an unfortified town, so something frightening could fall if not careful, and that may be Henry's job to go handle the Swedes. Alright, so here we are, end of the first fall phase. Let's figure out what happened. The Austrians rallied their forces, moved some guys into the actually over here into the German area in hopes of gaining some advantages by maybe doing some raids over here. I'm not quite sure what they played as a card. Oh yeah, they added some semi-light cav to Charles's force. It counts as light, but it also counts as line cav. Those are very cool cards. Prussians. Henry engaged the Imperials and came out pretty much with a draw there. They're both in the same space again. And Friedrich continued his siege at Olmütz. The Russians, what the hell did they do? I don't remember. They played, oh yeah, they played the improved, this is a cool piece, the East Prussian policy. That cost some points to Prussia, gave them some money, basically it increases their rating of East Prussia, and it gives them a chance to later play a card that'll increase their supply to what everyone else is doing. Right now they pay double for supply. The English played to remove Cumberland. They played the British Outrage card. They're allowed to play because Halley's Comet's over, and they sacked Cumberland, and they got somebody almost equally lousy in place, but a little better on attack, and they used him to attack and drove Richelieu out. Richelieu was actually demoralized, but he activated and actually laid siege to the Prussians, which is sufficient to fulfill the French commitment. Not that he succeeded yet. Okay, that's the end of 2 in the fall. Notice one thing, we've got a pile. We had one before, had a couple more leader wounded casualties out for the year. How did that happen? Well, one big reason is Charles attacked at Olmütz. Both sides demoralized. Friedrich was not moved. His siege also didn't work. The Prussians responded on their turn by attacking again with Henry against the Imperials, and again, not much happened there. Let's see what else we got. The Russians are moving towards Torun. If they capture a couple of the Polish cities, and I think they have to capture them rather than simply, they can't just have somebody outside. They actually have to own the fortress. It doesn't state that they have to siege it. It says they can move through it. It specifically states the Prussians have to siege those fortresses, but I think the Russians would have to too, because you're kind of forcing the Poles into a certain position, and that position is to allow the Russians to play a Polish embargo card for grain that'll further hinder the Prussians. One thing we notice, or should notice, is actually last round this happened. Prussian Monarchs' will dropped down low enough that they are now exhausted. That means they're not going to have their card bonus anymore. It also may affect some events. It may affect some tactical chits. It's not a huge matter as far as I can see, but it can't be good. And nobody else is really close. Everybody else's points for exhaustion are quite a bit further down. What we really have to worry about is getting down into those, well, a 0 especially. That's a complete collapse. So Prussia's kind of on the ropes here, even though it looks like Austria is getting their ass handed to them. Austria is doing a lot better in terms of monarchical will. Okay, what happened over here in the Hanover front? Well, not a lot actually. The French won their siege, and we've got, if we can find it, there. We got a Prussian unit in the captured pile, which means there's going to be an exchange. The other big thing is, now the Swedes had already entered the war on the side of the French. They haven't done anything yet, but the Danes entered now on the British side, and they're going over to kind of screen the Swedes. So an opportunity may have been lost for the coalition in terms of taking advantage of a big empty space. Of course, there's big empty space where those Russians are coming, and if Henry can't get up there, well, somebody's going to have to do something, and there isn't many somebodies left. There's Henry and there's Friedrich, and of course Cumberland's replacement, whoever the hell we got down here, Zastrow. Well, on the Austrian turn here in the third, Charles finally suffered the crushing defeat. We get Marker there. He attacked Friedrich once more, and dice didn't come up in his advantage this time. He ended up routed. Friedrich's force ended up not even demoralized. We got the additional captures, and this opens up the possibility to replace Charles, which is really the bonus. The disadvantage from the Austrian point of view is they lost to monarchical will, and perhaps much worse, the Prussians pulled themselves out of the exhausted state again. So for follow-ups, the Prussians, well, Friedrich did not succeed in his siege, although he did raise it one. They played the extorted loans card, only got $2 off of it. That's a one-time only play. Getting some money seems like a good idea always. What else do we have? After them, the Russians opened up their siege of Torun. And basically to do that, they needed, they needed to move, but they also needed more supply points. The Brits did a colonial action, which you see here. Unfortunately, it didn't go very well for them. They only played a 1-point card, and it went in France's favor. And speaking of France, they played the Army of Westphalia card, which is a big pile of reinforcements that they've got here under D'Estrées and Chevert. Okay, after the Austrians went, Charles is no longer in charge. He's been sacked, and we replaced him with Dawn, who's quite good actually. And as you see, Dawn marched up and managed to cut, and captured one unit, managed to cut actually Frederick's supply here, which is going to be a real problem for Frederick. He's not sieging Glotz. He could have, but he didn't want to spend the supplies on it, because he doesn't believe that he can maintain a siege. He's very far from his own supply line at 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's very easily cut. He's just smashing Frederick's chances of advancing at this point. So for the Prussian follow-up action, Friedrich did a Kleinerkrieg and did two things. One was he spent enough to guarantee that Daun's force would be knocked out of supply as well. And then he raised Moravia way up, bringing that closer to a problem for Austria's will. Then, and this is someplace where the rules are not absolutely clear, but every time because the rules don't cover this very well, but the siege stage seems like that extra free siege roll. And it does kind of make sense, because otherwise you would never have these crap siege states, because you wouldn't have supply to spend to get a siege roll. So The Prussians got a siege roll, and they got lucky. They got an honors of war, sends, and that was a 1 in 6 chance, even though they were at like +2 siege state. They sent the troop back to Brünn, and they now own Olmütz and have a captured depot there. Now that depot is not in supply, but they spent to move another depot up. So they're kind of in a position where the Austrians are going to have to fall back with that short supply marker. And the Prussians can probably move themselves into a controlled supply net running through here. Of course, the Austrians may just overrun this, which is the danger to that position. In which case, Olmütz will not be in supply, but it's still Prussian, and they can reestablish with a little bit of cash. Alright. Quick summary before the last round. Russians' siege of Torun succeeded. The English, they did something stupid. I think they bought a supply point. And then the French moved D'Estrées and gathered up forces at Dusseldorf, putting him in a position where there's a nice, good secondary French force. Remember, Richelieu outranks him. So as long as Richelieu's on the board, D'Estrées is only going to command that secondary force. But he's got a nice little mobile force, which might be able to threaten some of the Hanoverians. So Friedrich attacked against Daun, and Daun was able to come up with some nice cards against, or some nice counters against him. Defensive position and counter march and 12-pounders. Just devastated the total Prussian die roll bonuses. Ended up neither side's demoralized, but heavier losses to the Prussians. One of the heaviest losses is that Friedrich was wounded, but that's not a big deal because this was his last turn of the year. He'll have the winter to recover. And that's the end of 1758. Had to kind of look at the victory point chart. I had missed a couple of things on there. That's where it's sitting right now. Austria's at -10. Prussians are at +15. Britain's at 0. France and Russia are at +1 each. Overall coalition's down at -8 because of the heavy Austrian losses. But none of that's too terribly important unless the game goes on forever, which it may not seem to be doing, because Prussian will is down to 10, and Austrians at 11. We're seeing a lot of devastation in place. Moravia is devastated now. We had Bohemia before. The Prussian holdings in Germany are devastated. I think that's about it for news stuff. But there was a Kleiner Krieg at the end of the turn, and there's a lot of counters in the spaces now, causing a lot of damage. So everybody's will is kind of disintegrating here. We're seeing Saxony dropping. Now that's going to hurt the Austrians when that goes. Just got decent numbers up in Pomerania. Along with the keys that are missing, what we're not seeing is that the colonial conflict is not having the effect on the game. I saw some people stating that was the whole game. Well, I don't know if it is. To me, it seems like the whole game is right here, and that's where it should be. I think it depends on who's got the power and who's going to win, but the English and French are kind of a sideshow over here, and they can only spend one turn per season, 1 card per season on the colonial conflicts, whereas they have good reasons to fight down here, especially when the French are demanding victories or something like that. So anyway, I don't think that's a valid complaint. Seeing the Russians coming closer, everybody went back to their home locations. Nobody suffered there. Although Dawn wandered through where Friedrich was. That looks all valid. Nobody's allowed to intercept, so they just went home. Frederick is still here at Olmütz, which is now in supply. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, that's about it.